What's going on, guys? It's Tre'Leon Bay. In today's video, what I'm going to talk to you guys about today is lease option investing for beginners. I'm going to break it down for you guys in 10 easy steps. I'm going to tell you, some of y'all is going to end up getting a lease option deal within the next week or two just from the information in this video. All right, I'm going to break it down from A to Z, everything you need to know. So stay tuned. Let's go. Before we get into these 10 steps, I'm gonna have to give you a background story. Now, the background story is really important. Do not skip over the background story. Don't be like some people where they wanna skip over the step 5 before they even did the pregame, right? I'm gonna break down this background story because a lot of people wouldn't break it down for you and give you the background before you actually get into the business and think you can be successful inside the business. All right, so as far as the background story with myself goes is, what happened was I fell into the real estate industry and I didn't know which strategy I was going to be successful in first. It just so happened that lease option was the very next step in my progression of my career, and that worked out for me as the thing that propelled me to really start having major success. All right, so when I first started off and I got into the industry, just a little, I'm gonna try to speed this story up as much as possible. But when I first got started inside the real estate industry, I moved from Philadelphia to Atlanta, and I didn't know anything about real estate at all, literally nothing. I just answered an ad that said they were looking for marketing and leadership skills. I'm like, I got both of those. And so I applied for the job. I didn't even know what it was, what it entailed. They just gave me a big list of homes and said, go lease these homes out. I wasn't licensed at the time. Nobody that was being hired by this company was licensed at the time. It turns out that this company was actually a major hedge fund. I mean, they were buying up 100, 300 homes per month at the foreclosure auction. And so they had just more than enough inventory. Literally, almost anybody. They were the third biggest landlord in the entire country at the rate that they were buying properties and leasing them out. So I just so happened to stumble across this company that was just starting out as far as in 2012 when the big bust happened and a whole bunch of foreclosures hit the market. These were the investors that was buying the home. So I ended up getting this job. I'm still wet at the ears. I have no clue about real estate. I don't know who they are, what opportunities, what I just stepped into the door of. And so what I did is I just started marketing the homes, and I figured I was going to figure it out later. They had so much inventory, I literally ended up making thousands of dollars per week. I mean, anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000, sometimes over a weekend. At one point, I made $7,000 just on a weekend alone after hitting the goal of 12 properties. So I got bonuses with the properties plus bonuses for hitting the goal, and it just ended up being $7,000 just over the course of 3 days. And this was from renting. This was from me leasing out single-family properties, right? And I would tell people this, and they, I would tell real estate agents this or investors this, and they'd be like, "Nah, you're not making that type of money from a rental. From rentals, you mean? From you leasing out and being a leasing agent?" And, the game was crazy at that time. This company said that, they didn't mind if you had a license or not, because it turned out that they were hiring us under the table and just, sending us out there to go lease houses, even though you really needed a real estate license to do what we were doing. But because they was in such high volume, they figured by the time the commission catch them, they're already being made their money and be ready at the next phase of the deal to be able to sell these deals by the time the market turned around. And I didn't know this at the time. This is me in hindsight, realizing and learning from these big hedge fund companies and learning what really happened. And so at the time, I was doing very high volume of leasing out single family homes. I mean, this company was the #1 company in Georgia that was leasing out homes, and I was the second highest lease agent inside of the company. And so I'm leasing out just hundreds of homes. Like I moved in so many people in Georgia, like I can't even count how many people I've moved into homes as a leasing agent, to the point where I still, people still call me and they'll tell me addresses, and I'll remember the addresses because it was just, that many homes that I've moved people into. And so, me doing this high volume, it was just, that's what started to set me up for my success later on when it came down to the lease option strategy, okay? So I had a lot of experience just doing that over and over again. And then when the real estate market started to change over, this hedge fund switched over. They finally got caught by the commission, and the commission required everyone who was doing or who was employed by them at the time to get a real estate license. And so they forced us to get a real estate license within 3 months. that was where the money was coming in at, and so everybody jumped and got on doing it. So I got my real estate license just out of force because they forced us to do it. But by that time, the real estate market had turned over, and come to find out, we were moving in so many people, we weren't really qualifying these renters, and about 80% plus of the people that we were moving in actually moved out within the first month or two. So those numbers didn't look too good, and so they started to change the criteria of the type of people that we can actually get approved for these homes, and the inventory, they weren't buying as much. So if you can imagine, the profit went down for them and for us as agents. We didn't have as much inventory to rent out. And so the well started to dry up. It went from just everybody was like, woo, making money, like this was the craziest thing we ever saw. It was very competitive. People was willing to, fight people over this houses. That's how competitive it was. And then all the money dropped down, and everybody was trying to figure out their other options. And it's like, okay, I got this new real estate license. Maybe I can do something with that since the money dried up here. Let me go try to be a traditional agent. And that never really, fit with me. I never really fit into the box of being a real estate agent. It never really was for me. In the back of my mind, I always wanted to be an investor anyway, but I tried the agent thing, went to several brokers, 10 brokers that I had, thinking that I was going to find the right broker to take me under their wing and I'd finally be successful, but it just turned out not to be for me, right? Then I ran into wholesaling. Wholesaling was just a gift from God to be able to figure out there's other ways for me to be an investor and not have to go through the agent route and get lost that way. And so I found wholesaling, and I started to get some success with it. I started to understand it, and I started to feel like I fit in a little bit better, but it still wasn't happening as fast as I wanted it to with the situation that I was going through. And then came in lease options, all right? And I learned about lease options really in the midst of me learning about wholesaling, but I was so, gung-ho on wholesaling, I didn't even really want to give lease options a time of day at the time. And then when I still was trying wholesaling really, really hard, and I ran back into lease options, I'm like, you know what? Let me switch the game up a little bit on myself. Let me just try this other tactic out to see if it's for me. All right, so that's what I end up doing. I end up just, all right, let me put wholesaling to the side for a quick second. Let me give my all to this lease option thing, and just let me just see. Since I already tried with the wholesaling, it just wasn't. I was getting it, but it wasn't turning over into profit as fast, right? And so what happened was, with my first real estate deal ended up being a lease option, but that was only because, again, I had the skills that was already preformed, that was already, basically already put myself in that position to be able to know how to do it before I actually did it. All right, so when I fell into lease options, it was like this. It was like everything lined up with me and who I was and what my skill set was and all of my talents and, all of my past experiences. Those things just lined up. And so it ended up just being, deal after deal after deal, as soon as I lined up and aligned with what lined up with me. All right, so after that, I started making it in all the rest of the real estate strategies, wholesaling, start kicking it off and really start making some, big spreads in wholesaling and, flipping properties and doing other things. So, commercial real estate, things like that started to fall in after I had my first success with lease options. And so that's why I'm so hyped. That's why I love lease options so much, because it was my step in the door and my step running through the door to be able to open up everything else for me. And it ended up being sweet, right? It ended up being easy for me only because it fit with me. All right, so a lot of people don't tell you that backstory. They'll tell you this will work for everybody because it worked for me. Lease options might not work for you like how it worked for me or like how it worked for the next person, but it just might work for you. If it is for you, in this video, I'm about to break down the exact steps. All 10 of these steps you can't skip any of these steps when you're doing lease option. And when I'm doing these steps, I'm gonna give you the detail after doing hundreds of homes and leasing out and lease option and hundreds of homes. I think I leased out probably about $10 million in assets of real estate, just straight leasing. And then in lease option by myself, I did about 3 million plus just in lease options as far as the asset worth of the real estate homes. All right, so I leased out and I lease optioned a lot of homes. So I'm about to break down the real to you because I don't know many people that's gonna break it down like how I'm about to break it down to you as far as the experience that I've had in lease options, all right? So let's go with step number one. All right, so step number one is finding the seller, all right? Finding the deal. That's usually how any real estate strategy is literally gonna start off, with finding the deal. But lease option, finding the deal is just slightly different, all right? So let's talk about what makes the lease option deal so different when it comes down to finding the deal. All right, so with lease options, just key things that you want to look out for. And I didn't know these key things prior to me having experience in lease option. Really, when I ran into my first lease option deal, it was from messaging people online, investors, seeing if they had deals going on and if they needed help with some deals. And then someone ended up, letting me know their situation. Deals always start off with stories. They always start out with situations that need solutions that are creative, that are untraditional, that some people didn't think about a solution for. A solution like it, because it's actually a problem that most traditional people wouldn't know how to solve, and lease options is perfect for those type of stories. So I ran into a seller at the time who was going through a specific unique situation, and as I was trying to negotiate with them on a wholesale deal, they were very reserved, and so I was like, okay, they didn't say no, but they didn't say yes. Let me push this other option towards them as far as lease options is concerned. I was very creative. I ended up getting it on a non-exclusive agreement, meaning I was just saying, if you go out there and find a buyer or a seller, whatever you're looking for, that's still cool. I'll be okay with that. Just give me the chance to be able to, get the house in my hands, and I'm going to help you out as much as I can and see if I can actually pull through for you, but you're not totally committed to just me. All right, so I was very creative at my first deal. The person ended up giving me 2 units actually, and that ended up being my first lease option deal. It was like a 2-for-1. Then my third lease option deal came from me putting out a marketing campaign of mailers, and initially calling the seller to try to get a wholesale deal again. Then a few months later, after the lead kind of was dead, I picked the phone back up and called all of the leads in my database, and I switched my offer a little bit, and I started offering 3 things instead of 1 thing as just being a wholesale deal. And then that seller ended up choosing the lease option as the option. All right, so that's literally how my third deal came into it, where I wasn't really pinpointing certain leads. I was just giving a bunch of offers and seeing where it was going. But now in hindsight, now that I have the experience, lease option deals have a certain look to it. All right, it has a certain feel to it. Everybody doesn't fit into that box of this solution is good for you. You would have to know what category of boxes does the home and the seller situations fit into. Sometimes you have the wholesale deals where with the wholesale deals, certain houses are usually need a lot of work done to it. Then you have the lease option deals, and the lease option deals are usually deals where landlords are traditionally already used to getting cash flow from it, but they're tired of dealing with a landlord, and you come in there as a solutionist, and there's several different situations that might fit a lease option that doesn't fit other situations. All right, then you have the listing agreement that most agents will go for, and it's only a certain type of houses that fit a listing agreement. All right, and it's usually the best houses for that is usually houses that are, in tip-top shape, doesn't have any problems with it. You can get already a high dollar for it, and you have to just know what category fit better with the situation and the seller's situation. Sometimes the seller will have multiple options. The house might be in good condition, and the seller might be able to choose which 3 that they want, even though it might not be, it might fit in one category best. If the seller chooses another category and that still kind of fits with them, that's why I give multiple options, okay? So finding a deal is the first thing that you want to do in a lease option. You want to find a deal in a good neighborhood, a medium to good neighborhood. All right, you want to find a house that's in pretty good condition. You don't want to put a tenant buyer in a house that needs a whole lot of work because you're going to have a whole lot of headaches. And then also you want to have a home and a seller that's really workable. Somebody that's not scrambling for every penny, that just, tight with every penny, they, barely making it. You don't want to deal with sellers that's in those type situations, because that's going to make it definitely a more stressful deal with you, because lease options are a little bit more long-term. You're talking about anywhere from 1 year to 5 years that you're going to be working these lease option deals, okay? And we'll get a little bit more into that later. Step number 2 is negotiating the deal. All right, so when you're negotiating with sellers, when it comes down to lease options, I mentioned a little bit about that in the first video, is you want to be able to give multiple options when you're negotiating with any seller on any type of real estate deal, literally. But with the lease options, it flows a lot more better when you're able to build a relationship with a seller. That means multiple touches. You're able to educate this seller on what a lease option is, because most people don't know what a lease option is, so it takes some time to educate the seller, it takes some time to build a relationship so people know that you're the solution, and then the icing on the cake is to not be too pushy, right? And that's what, that's what I feel like a lot of things that we'll do here in my company with my coaching students is we kind of flip it on the other side, where some people feel like you got to go in there, push people to an option, negotiate, get them to say what the hell you want them to say, sign the contract, bang, boom, done. We don't do it like that, all right? When it comes down to making this thing less stressful for us and the best win-win situation for the seller, we'll usually give the multiple options so we can see, okay, which one fits with you best? Which one do you feel like fits with you best? Or you don't know, let me educate you on what I feel like this fits with you best. And so as I'm telling them like a consultant type of, viewpoint, then they start to understand like, oh, you know what? That does seem like the best for my situation now that you've explained it to me in that manner, and I see all of my options and have them all clearly laid out. All right, so when you're negotiating with the seller on a lease option, the main thing you want to do is be able to educate them on what it is. And when they see that they don't have any stress involved, where especially landlords, if they're tired landlords, they seem to be perfect ideally for a lease option negotiating. So when you're negotiating with them, most of the time it comes down to, hey, you have a house, you're tired of dealing with tenants, you feel like you're not getting the market rent, the tenant is calling you all the time dealing with maintenance. You don't have to worry about any of that when it comes down to dealing with me and my tenant buyers and with the way we lease option to these folks. I'm going to take care of that. I'm going to take care of, you just receiving the monthly check every single month. You don't have to worry about any tenants, any maintenance, any of that. Closing the deal, I'm going to make sure it's closed for you for top dollar as much as possible. And they usually like hearing that when you're negotiating with sellers when it comes down to lease options. And so I find myself able to get yeses a lot quicker when I finally get them to get it to click on what a lease option is compared to their other options. It just clicks with them more depending on their situation. All right, so that's the number 2 is negotiating the deal with the seller. Step number 3 is actually getting the deal on contract. All right, lease option contracts is different. It's not a wholesale deal. It's not a listing. You can't use any old contracts when it comes down to lease options. It literally has to be very specific, because it's different contracts that you'll do with the seller than with the buyer. It's different contracts that you'll want to have in addition to just a regular lease option contract. You still got to add other paperwork into this, okay? So when I'm dealing with the contract with the seller, I make sure there's certain clauses inside the contract to make sure that I'm protected and everything is disclosed and everybody's clear on what my position is, because you're not a property manager, you're not an agent, you're not their agent, you're not providing any agency or any representation. Those things have to be clear that you're an investor and you're a principal in the deal with your own interests at heart. All right, those things have to be clearly laid out verbally and contractually when you're dealing with these type of creative real estate strategies, so that everybody's clear, nobody's confused. You have to come back later like, oh, I didn't know what you was doing with my house. You have to build that trust. You have to be transparent when you're dealing with lease options, okay? And so when we're getting it on contract, we want to be able to have what I call the A to B contract with the seller. It can be one page. I think ours is one page legal size of a contract. Spells everything out nice and easy. Just very easily read. You don't need a lawyer to kind of go through it. It's just really, really simple, real easy, but still protects both parties. And you actually have that sign that gives you the interest to be able to go for it and now sublease the house out to a tenant buyer if you're going to do a sandwich lease option. All right, so step number 4 is actually marketing the deal. So once you got it on contract, now it's time to get that property out there on the market. Contrary to a lot of people, I get some questions sometimes about, what do I do if I can't find a tenant buyer? Or, people start to overthink it so much you haven't even got a deal yet, but you're thinking about step number 4. You didn't do step number 1 yet, or 2, or 3. So don't worry about the tenant buyer. We tend to overthink things and we talk our stuff out of deals sometimes. We literally just talk ourselves out of getting a deal because you were thinking too far ahead. Tenant buyers are the easiest thing about lease options. Once you have a good deal, this nice, sparkling, nice house that most people wouldn't even be able to get a loan for, and you're offering them to be able to be a buyer, a tenant buyer, to a deal that they usually wouldn't be able to qualify for, and you're going to help them to be able to get qualified for it, people are going to knock down your door. Like, get ready, because your phone is going to be ringing off the hook if you can actually get a deal, negotiate the deal, get it on contract, and then get ready to market this home. Once you're at that step, you're going to make your phone is going to be ringing off the hook when you got the deal in certain places online. You just literally just got to post it online in a few different online places. Online make it so easy, and your phone is just going to be ringing off the hook. So marketing the property, you just want to put it on all the online sites. You want to put bandit signs, right on the lawn of the house, or if you don't have a lawn, whatever city you in, post it on the side of a telephone pole, post it around the neighborhood, around the subdivision, and have your bandit signs everywhere, post it online, and go out and make sure you talk to people sometimes and seeing if they're in the neighborhood, if they actually need somewhere to, if they're looking for somewhere to rent, okay? And then you can actually say if they're looking for somewhere to buy as well, you can talk buyers into being tenant buyers, and you can talk tenant buyers, and you can talk tenants into being tenant buyers. All right, you kind of have both spectrums, but usually it's easier to talk tenants into being tenant buyers because you're talking about helping them to be able to get more qualified to purchase a home when they necessarily didn't think that they could actually get qualified to purchase a home, and they were already stuck in the rental circle without any light at the end of the tunnel. And so if they had the means and they had the buyer's mindset, that's what it's going to help you, okay? So that's marketing the deal, step number 4. Step number 5 is actually qualifying the tenant buyer. So we already did marketing the property. Your phone is already blowing up. You got all these people like, yeah, I love the house. What's the qualifications? What do I have to do? What I got to do to move forward? You can get lost in that sometimes because your phone will be ringing and everybody seems interested. It's like, this deal is hot. Everybody want it. And then you can get stuck because you start figuring out that these people may not be qualified to actually purchase the home in the end. And that's the point of actually doing a lease option, and that's where the bigger money is to get to the end of the deal. And so, like I was saying before in the background story, when I was leasing out a whole bunch of homes, leasing it for another entity, so for the hedge fund, I was just getting my commission in it. So I'm like, I'll put anybody in a home. As long as I get my commission, who cares what happens after I get you in the home? I'm out of it. I'm done. Wipe my hands with it. Going the next way, leasing out the next house. And then come to find out, we were putting a whole bunch of unqualified people into these homes and they was moving out in a month or two. All right, now when it comes down to you being the investor, all right, you're actually going to be dealing with these people for a year to 5 years, depending on how you structure it, for them to be able to qualify this house. So this is a long-term relationship. You come in here, if they don't actually qualify or actually purchase a home, it's going to be a direct effect on you. All right, so now the game switched for me. It went from anybody who wanted, got the money, good, let's go, to okay, I don't care if you have the money right now. Let me actually search your background. Let me do a background search. Let me make sure that you ain't just tear up a home, just the last couple homes you've been to. You ain't just late or got evicted, or if they have gotten evicted, let me see if you have the personality that I can actually work with and work with you to get your credit together or get out of your situation, because lease options is best because it's giving people a second chance. But you got to notice which of those people are actually ready for a second chance. Not everybody's ready for a second chance. Not everybody's going to go forward and actually fix their credit, even if you give them the means to do so. With these folks, because they're tenant buyers, you literally have to think about the mind frame of these people being in a buyer's mind frame and not just regular tenants. Regular tenants is going to treat your home like a regular tenant home. They're going to call you like they're in a regular tenant home when it comes down to maintenance. And you definitely want to make sure you're dealing with a person and you have this, you actually say this up front to them, like, we're looking for people with a buyer's mind frame. Are you serious about buying this house? Can you buy this house within the next year? Are you going to do what it takes to be able to buy this house? Can you take care of this house as if it was yours and you bought this house? Like, you ask those type of questions to make sure that you're talking with the right type of person, because the worst thing that you can do is get a tenant inside of your lease option house. It's gonna give you a headache. It's gonna give the seller a headache, and you promised them that they wouldn't get a headache. And it's gonna feel like it's the worst situation in the world for that tenant because they thought they was inside of a regular rental, and it wasn't that situation because you wasn't clear. All right. So again, this isn't for everybody. You got to know how to talk and actually say these things up front, and you have to know how to qualify this tenant buyer if you want to make this job easy on yourself. And then step number 6 is actually contracting with the tenant buyer. With the contract, you actually want to use what we call a B to C contract with the tenant buyer. So it's different. So you're the B. I didn't explain that yet, right? You are the B, the seller is the A, the tenant buyer is the C. So you're sandwiched in between. So you have an A to B contract with the seller, then you have a B to C contract with the tenant buyer. So you're contracting with the tenant buyer, you and them have a relationship, and you've contracted with the seller, you and the seller have a relationship. A and C doesn't have a relationship. They don't know each other. If they do know each other, they don't contact each other. They don't do any business with each other. They're not contracting with each other. You're contracting with the seller, and you're contracting with the tenant buyer. So you're managing both relationships here. And that makes it easier for the seller because they didn't really want to deal with the tenant buyer in the first place. And you're so much of a good landlord that you are the best thing for the tenant to be able to negotiate with, because the landlord doesn't give a crap any damn way, or doesn't really want to talk to you. So I'm responsive. I'm going to take care of stuff. I'm going to be transparent and upfront with you. I'm on my job. I'm the best person to talk to you and to do business with you anyway. That's what you get paid for. That's your strength, your unique selling proposition of you actually being in the deal and being an investor, is because you can provide these things really well. That's what you get paid for. That's what you get the big bucks for. So you have to step in there and do your job. All right, so that's what it comes down to. The contracting with the tenant buyer is make sure you have a very thorough B2C contract that lays out everything and the responsibilities that you're basically assigning over to the tenant buyer. Make sure it's all cleared out, that they're going to be responsible for the maintenance, they're going to be responsible for getting their credit together, they're going to be responsible for paying their rent on time and paying it directly to the source that you told them to pay. And you actually want to have them pay a little bit over market rent. You want to be able to negotiate with the seller market rent or below market rent, and then charge the tenant buyer market rent or above market rent, and you take the spread in between. And that takes some, take a little bit of skill set getting used to that, where you can run your numbers correctly to make sure you get a spread every which way. And then you also require a lease option fee from the tenant buyer. Okay, so it's not a down payment. It's not a what do they call it? Security deposit. All right, it's not a security deposit. It's not a down payment. Those aren't terms that we're using in this lease option. When you're doing down payment, that's for somebody that's purchasing the house. If you're doing a security agreement, that's for somebody that's leasing the house. You're not leasing it, you're not selling the house, you're lease optioning this house. And so you're charging a lease option fee for the tenant buyer to be able to come inside this home and have the option to purchase it. That's what they're paying for. The option to purchase the house, they're the first one in line to be able to have purchase rights, and that's what they're paying for up front. All right, so we have anywhere from, depending on how much the house is worth, what type of neighborhood, situation, all of those things get weighed out on how much you charge for a lease option fee. But usually we charge anywhere from $2,500 at the lease amount if it's like a townhome or something small like a condo, all the way up to $10,000, $20,000 down if it's a very nice house or if it's a medium-sized house. Okay, so you charge those things for folks to be able to have the option to be able to lease option, as well as the rent. And so they have to be very aware that this is a lease option fee, this is non-refundable, this isn't coming back, this isn't no security deposit, this isn't a down payment where it's going to be available for you once you're actually ready to buy the house. This is a fee that you're paying up front. All right, so make that clear inside your negotiations when it comes down to contracting with your tenant buyer. And now we moved on to step number 7, supervising the rent payments. When you're supervising the rent payments, there's several different ways that you can do it. If you're a real estate agent, you might want to watch your broker terms. Sometimes they don't want you to be a property manager. Sometimes they don't want you to accept rent payments because you're a licensed agent. So you have to be, very particular on what your contractual obligations are. If you're not a real estate agent, then you're fine. All right, so you're going to be able to accept rent payments. It's really on behalf of yourself because you've contracted with the seller, and the seller gave you all rights to the property, and now you're able to sublease to the tenant buyer contractually. Now you're the landlord, you're receiving the payments, you're taking your spread, and then you're sending over checks straight to the seller. All right, so that's how that's working. You can accept rent payments straight to your bank account, which I really enjoyed. People just go to the bank, put it in the bank account, bang, boom, done. You can accept payments online if you have the type of tenants that are very internet savvy and stuff like that. Some tenants aren't. You get some older folks that's just like, look, I don't want to pay online. I'm like, fine, you're going to go to the bank and you're going to deposit it there. I don't go pick up rent checks and go run around the city picking up rent checks. But if you choose to, that's totally on you. You might want to be more hands-on. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a choice on which way you want to be able to manage these rent payments. But the important thing is for you to be on the time frame. If you say they have a 5-day grace period, you giving them reminders of when the rent is due. When the 5 days coming up, you're on your 5th day, action is going to be done. On that 5th day, sending them notices in the mail or serving them right to their door. You have to be on that time frame or they're going to take advantage. When they see that you're not strict on your time frame or that you be lollygagging and you ain't really on them, they're going to lollygag with you with this rent payment. All right, so you want to make sure that you're on them about this is the time frame. I'm going to stick to that. I'm going to hold you to that. And if you don't go forward, then I'm going to be able to put an eviction on you, and I'm going to have to evict you out and then get a new tenant in. And we had to do that twice within all of the lease options that we had, where we actually had to go all the way forward and evict somebody out and go to eviction court and actually evict those tenants out. And in eviction court, the landlords have the upper hand. All right, tenants barely win in eviction court unless it was something drastic and they got drastically sick and a doctor came in there and verified they got sick from the house. It's the only time the tenant is really winning. Unfortunately, it's all in the landlord's favor when you go in there, and if you're contractually the one who leased it out and you had interest contractually to allow you to lease it out, you're the landlord inside of tenant tenant court. So if you have to evict the tenant out, if they don't go through with their agreement, you just have to get them out and get a new one, okay? All right, so step number 8 is actually dealing with maintenance, okay? Now, if you have the contracts that we have, we're telling the tenant buyers that they're actually gonna be responsible for the maintenance of the home, okay? So if you have the same contracts that we're dealing with, we make sure we put the right clauses in there to make this as stress-free as possible for us. And so we want to make sure that the tenant buyer is aware that because you're in an interim period of purchasing this home was in great condition when you got in there, we want to make sure you keep it in great condition on your own dime when it comes down to it, because you're going to be buying this house next year, and we want you to treat it as though it's your own house. So you're going to be responsible for maintenance. All right, so they have to be clear about that, and they have to know that you're sticking with that. But then also you have to use some discretion when you're dealing with this, when you're dealing with lease options, because if it's something major like a roof, or something major like, heating and air, or something, plumbing, or something really major that might cost thousands of dollars, those are things you don't want to leave in the tenant's hand, because they'll come up with all types of little ways to swindle it, patch it up, and really mess up the house at the end of the day, or just not get it done and really be very dissatisfied about moving forward and buying it. And so the real big major things, those are the things you want to go back to the seller, and you want to be able to negotiate with the seller, like, look, we promised the tenant that there wasn't going to be no major problems with this house. Some major problems seem to have happened. What can we do about this? Let's fix this right away, and get the seller to actually pay for the major things, very, very major things in the house. All of the rest of the little things that's wrong with the house, or if they want to do any upgrades or all those things, the tenant buyer is responsible for all of those little toilets and things like that. They're responsible for those things and those maintenance and those renovating out. Okay, so make sure you know who's responsible for what. It's really up to your discretion, because you put on contract that you're going to make sure that the tenant buyer deals with all maintenance, but you still use your discretion to make sure everybody's happy in a deal, and it's like a give and take, a sway. When you actually do a lease option, you have to know who's responsible for what and who should fall on what to make everybody happy. And again, that's why you're getting paid the big bucks, because you know how to do those things. So now we're here with step number 9, which is enforcing the credit repair addendum. All right, again, if you're dealing with the paperwork that we have available, we're going to have a credit repair addendum that's going to go with the B2C contract for the tenant buyer. And in the credit repair addendum, we make sure we state to them that you are contractually obligated to, within 60 days, get into a credit repair program and at least stay in there for at least 6 months, a year, however long you want to put into your addendum, that they have to stay inside that credit repair program, or they're breaching their tenant buyer contract. They're going to lose their option to be able to purchase the house if they don't stick with this agreement. And so you have the right to pull the contract from them, which, in my personal experience, I haven't really needed to, because either I know they're serious about buying a house or they not, and I know that I'm going to get them out there in the next term, get them out of the house in the next term and not renew it, because I see they're not really that serious on the credit repair program. So I never necessarily pulled it from underneath of them because of that addendum, but you still want to have it on paper and have the right to say, look, you haven't in 60 days, you haven't gotten a credit repair program. You're not taking it serious. I don't see you doing this for 6 months, for a year. You're not taking it serious. Also, it gives you the right to be able to speak directly with that credit repair company, whether or not you bought them the credit repair company, or whether or not they went and found a credit repair company. The contract, the addendum, the credit repair addendum will give you the right to be able to go out there and speak directly to that credit repair company, so you can see, are they seriously involved with this credit repair company? Also, are you as a credit repair company actually serious and really doing your job on fixing their credit? Because I need them to be able to purchase this house in a year or two, depending on what you negotiated. And so you want to make sure both people are on the ball with getting to the end of the deal, because that's where the bigger money is when you actually close the deal. So you want to work hard at that and keep track of those things. All right, so now we have step number 10. Step number 10 is closing the lease option deal. And to tell the truth, most lease options aren't going to make it to closing. It's real. It's a fact in the industry. I don't care how many people try to hide it, how many people try to make it seem like it's not so. Most lease option deals don't make it to closing. But when you get good at this, when you're able to get good at this, you'll start noticing from the qualifying the tenant whether or not it's actually going to make it all the way to closing. You'll be able to notice if you put somebody in there and you're like, all right, I just needed somebody in there real quick so I can get some cash flow coming in. But I doubt they're going to actually go and do it and actually fix their credit and go find financing, can pay for financing, can afford to put a down payment down. Some people you just know, you have this feeling that they're not, and that's okay. But some people, when you actually get good at this, you'll be able to notice and see and feel when those are the right people they're gonna be able to get their credit fixed. They already got a buyer's mind frame. They're already thinking about how they're gonna put A and B together. They're very organized. They're very, serious about what they say they're gonna do. And those are the people that are gonna have you in and out of these lease option deals like it's candy. All right, and like I said, that's where the bigger checks is made. You wanna be able to make sure you have a spread in between what you have the deal on contract, the sales price with the seller, and a spread in between what you have a sales price with the actual tenant buyer. So, if you have the deal on contract for $100,000 with the seller, you want to sell it to the tenant buyer for $120, $115, whatever spread you decide is good. And so that way, when it does come over to closing, you're making your 15, 20K or more on the deal because you had the spread in between, and you can actually sell a lease option top dollar or a little bit higher sometimes if they can get approved for a certain type of loan. And then also when you're negotiating with the seller, you want to negotiate a little teeny bit lower than market price, so that way you make sure you have your spread in at the end, because you want to make sure that all this work you've been doing over this year or 2 years or however long it take you to be able to close this deal, you want to make sure that you're going to get something at the end of it after all of your work. And so it's very important for you to structure the deal right, and that's also very important for you to be involved to actually close this deal. All right, now when you're closing the deal, I know I just had somebody ask me a question. I answered their question on one of our lease option videos, or one of our sandwich lease option videos, I believe they wrote the comment on. But the comment was about closing the deal, like, okay, who gets paid during the closing, or where do you close it at, or when you have this spread, like how does that work to actually get paid? And so I'm gonna just break that down, very quickly. Is you have several ways to be able to structure the deal when you're closing. And because this is a creative real estate strategy, the beautiful part about creative real estate investing is that you get to get creative. So you get to fit the situation with the deal. So I'm gonna give a few options, right? So if you've built up a trust relationship with the seller, a very good trust relationship with the seller, then you can simply take the deal, have it on contract with the seller for a certain price, go and have the buyer close with a closing agent for the price that you had it on contract with, and just have them send it to the seller and have the seller write you a check for the difference. That's the easy way. Once you've built a relationship with the seller, you trust the seller is going to send you over your difference, and they're going to be okay with the spread that you made in between. If you don't want the seller to know about the spread that you made in between, you can do a double closing, and you want to make sure you have the right closing agent or title company that does double closing, where you can actually close on the deal in your company's name, and then at the same time, they're going to take the paperwork, and then they're going to close the deal and have you sell it to the tenant buyer, all in the same, kind of swooping. That's kind of how I do. You kind of use the tenant buyer's money to close your deal with the seller, and then still use the tenant buyer's money to, buy. The closing agent works that out. We had a couple times where we're double closed. You literally only taking title for like a couple seconds when you're doing a double close, but you're still on the HUD as the title owner for just a couple seconds. So when you're doing a double close, only certain title agents or closing agents are able to do a double close. The third option, if they're not able to do a double close, what you can do is use transactional funding. And so you'll get somebody who's willing to give you transactional funding. They're going to take a little bit of spread out of your profit, so make sure there's enough spread where you can use transactional funding and it makes sense for you. You'll take that transactional funding. They'll usually give you transactional funding for a day or a week, or sometimes up to a month, depending on the company that you're working with. But they just want to make sure that you have a serious qualified buyer that's definitely going to buy before they're able to give you that transactional funding. So you'll take the transactional funding money, you'll close with the seller, you'll be on contract for a day or 7 days or 30 days, however long you have the agreement with the transactional funding. You'll be the title owner until you actually close with the tenant buyer, and the tenant buyer is able to go through and close with whatever financing that they decide to close with. All right, so that's just 3 different options. Like I said, it's creative real estate investing, so you can work something out if you use your head. You can always come up with a solution to a problem. That's the fun part of this game, that you can do that, and you can do it quickly. Like, lease options can happen quickly. They can, you can get someone in the house quickly. You can make your spread up front, make your spread in between, and make your spread at closing. And it's one of the most beautiful strategies that I've run into, honestly. All right, I got a bonus for you. The bonus is, somebody asked me, again, in one of our other videos, what happens if the tenant buyer doesn't buy the house? Very simple answer to that. You get another tenant buyer inside the house. All right? You get another tenant buyer. You do better this time. You qualify them a little bit better. you market it again, and you get somebody else inside of the house, and then you go and you do the same thing over again. So you get your upfront lease option fee, you negotiate your spread, and you keep doing that until you find somebody that's able to actually purchase the house and move forward with the closing. All right, so you just keep doing it. You keep getting paid. There's really no sweat off your back. You just gotta wait a little longer to get the big bucks at the end, but you still get your bucks in between when you're doing lease options, because you're able to just keep going and keep getting more people until you get somebody who's really serious about going forward. All right, guys, so that's the video about lease option investing. It's a little bit longer than I thought. Okay, but the point was I want to be able to give you all of the nooks and crannies, everything that you need to be able to go out there, feel confident, and going to at least go and do step one, right? Start at step one, just go out there and find the lease option deal. The rest of the steps is going to come. It's going to be okay. You're going to learn this thing. You have to jump out there before you're an expert anyway to be able to get better, to have success. You got to jump out there and do it. You might mess up a few times. That's okay. Everybody has that while they're learning. If you need some help with it, you can feel free to contact me. Support at freedomlifestyleinvestors.com, and I'll be happy to just give you a free consultation, or you can purchase the lease option ebook that we have, or if you want to move forward and do coaching or partnerships, we can talk about that. Whatever I can do to be able to help you to be able to get there. So if you want to take advantage of this strategy, it can change your life. It changed my life, changed me and my wife's life as far as lease options is concerned, and having quick success with it. So are you in the best position for this next economic transition? All right, you know how I want to leave you with that. Make sure that you subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Click the notification bell if you haven't already done so. I'm going to have a lot more videos coming to you about the tactics that's working right now, as well as the real estate strategies and, economics as a whole that's going to make it work in the future. So I'm excited, guys. Like I said, I wish I could just put everything in one video, but I'm going to just do it day by day, give you more and more. So just keep watching, all right? Keep staying tuned. Peace and love.